Good morning. My name is Nathan Richardson. I'm here with Lule, Demmissie, and we are going to be talking about diversity in finance and tech, seizing the 2020 moment. Where do we go from here? Just to give you a quick introduction, my name is Nathan Richardson. I am the Executive Vice President at Red Ventures, and we are a Charlotte, North Carolina-based company. And I'm going to hand it to Lule, who can tell you about her company, which is also based in Charlotte.
Good morning, everyone. Hi, Nathan. Good to see you. My name is Lule Demmissie. I'm based in New York at the moment, but most of the time in Charlotte as well. I am the president of Ally Invest, which is a broker-dealer, an online broker-dealer and advisory service that's part of the Ally Bank, which is Ally Bank is a Fintech as well. And good to see you again.
So you and I are sort of on the circuit of people of our generation who have made it through 20 years of diversity not really being on the radar. And since the last time we saw one another, there's been a huge breakthrough with Citibank, which just basically throws the conversation around diversity at the top banks into a new realm with Jane Fraser's appointment. What were your thoughts when you saw that, and what do you think is next there?
Yeah, I'm not one of those people, Nathan, that gets cynical about any one move. Every move, every direction to the future is a happy one for me, no matter how imperfect, unless it's nefarious. And I can't imagine this is nefarious, right? So ultimately, I feel like it's a good thing. I feel like this change is only going to happen if more and more dots go into the right direction. So Citibank is a big institution, right? So, one could say, it's like as goes California, that saying used to go, right? So big institutions can influence things. In terms of the substantive expectations I am ambitious in my determination, but patient in the outcome, So.
You always leave me with so many thoughts and ways of framing things. One of the things that I always use that you said when we talked once was, I don't want to be eating rice pudding every day. And, it's something that I say to my colleagues regularly is that, we don't want to all look and talk and think the same way, and that our strength is going to come through our diversity, and we're going to have all sorts of different sauces in the mix. And
yeah,
I recognize that I'm a special sauce, and not everyone has met a gay man, and which is remarkable in 2020, but they haven't or worked with them. So, since we last met, have things changed for you, or have you seen any progress or things that have sort of surprised you in a good way, or maybe not a great way?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that they have changed substantively in the attitude of people I see. I mean, I feel like since gay marriage, it changed a lot, right? And I would say now, I think the climate we're in, has been a bit divisive, which is not helpful, right? But I think that in general, my day-to-day interactions with people, have they gotten better? I'd say I have seen more people who are exposed to other types of people. And insofar that happens, not just gay people, I mean, just other types. And insofar that is happening, it's improving the climate in which I operate, right? So I couldn't pinpoint any one thing, but I would say, yes, it's gotten better. Fundamentally, though, the part that I measure at better is as much not just about being gay as it is about being Black. And on that front, I'd say not really. And I think that's because the systemic issues around that are so much stronger than any other demographic challenges in terms of Black and brown. So that one I'd say is a little bit more tougher.
I couldn't agree with you more. I feel like there was an initial sort of excitement is the wrong word, initial energy around the BLM movement after George Floyd's death. And I feel like we're now in this awkward moment where we've had a shakeout of people getting involved, and the momentum hasn't necessarily stuck. And I think that it's, on all of us to remember that this is systemic and it's structural. And I do think there's a number of things that are happening that are, to me, positive and exciting. So I think in the fintech space, I look at a company like Stripe and what Jack Dorsey and Jackie Reese are doing with Stripe to invest in movements to create more equitable finance opportunities is really remarkable.
Yes,
And sorry, Square, not Stripe. And I think that we're seeing that with a number of major tech companies, and I'm hoping that this is a moment when a lot of the fintech companies can really take a leadership role, because the next generation is going to look and say what Jack did with Square and how they invested in communities that need their investment are going to look back and say, that's a brand I want to be part of.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about stuff like that.
It is. I mean, I do think, there are, people aren't just doing lip service now, and which is awesome. I think that, it's not even just at that at that level of magnitude. Like Ally just started a foundation and funded it with something like $30 million. And so I do think that, each company doing its size, whatever its size of punching is, right? Making sure that we fight this issue. I feel like that's happening, which is good. What my issue is, dear. I think that every one of us have to figure out what our lane is in this fight, because there are so many lanes that have hardened this systemic issue, right? And so for me, my lane is making sure that there are enough talent. There's enough of a talent pool coming up the ranks, getting the experience, because often we hear that there isn't enough in the pipeline. It's not because there isn't enough in the pipeline. They're not getting through one of the first or second doors, right? And so my mission is to try to get that door bust open, so there's enough pipeline of color, especially Black and Brown, which is where we're lacking, individuals with experience that is relevant in the fintech space, right? So they can, with gusto, go after these opportunities where they become founders or working for founders, right?
Yeah, I think back to one of the panels we did a few years ago with Stephanie Lampkin, who founded Blendor, and she is all about helping to debunk the pipeline myth, which effectively it is. And I think we saw, a lot of press around Wells Fargo this week and their CEO on the pipeline of talent, and hopefully Wells starts using Blendor and using the tools that Stephanie's put together on that front. Because she has effectively created a tool to make this myth be taken off the table, which I think is really something remarkable.
Yeah, I do think tools are important. Institutional solutions they're the most scalable there are, right? I don't let individuals off the hook either, because at the end of the day, it's like everything else. If you outsource the transformation to either a model, a plan, you're basically saying, I don't take the responsibility of doing the reconstruction that I have to do of myself as well, right? So I don't necessarily take individuals off the hook too. I always ask the question, you've heard me say this, like, how diverse is your friendship circle? How diverse is your LinkedIn profile, or whatever system you use to keep up with talent? So I do believe those institutional solutions are necessary, but I am very much committed to making sure that individuals don't get off the hook on that either. And not in a, how would I put it? Not in a wag the finger way, but it's back to what you and I have talked about, which is like, if you get to this side of the ocean, guess what? It's more fun. It's more enriching. Your life will be richer. Not just your soul will be happier, but your life will be richer because you're informed by different kinds of life events and different kinds of views. And there's something so enriching about that in life. So it's not through wagging the finger on them. It's more because I think that we can't let each other off the hook, because it's going to be a more valuable and more enriched society if we do it.
I couldn't agree more. There are two things one structural thing that came up that I hadn't noticed, or maybe it's new, that I think could be applied to everything in D&I that one tech company is doing it's peripherally in finance, which is Zillow. If you're on Zillow now and you scroll down, you can see that they actually have a quality rating by community, by state, to see which communities have protections for LGBTQ people in housing, in employment, in education. And when I saw it, my mouth nearly dropped. I was just like, what? This is incredible. And let's bring it home. We're at Fintech South, and I plugged in something in Charlotte, and I plugged something in South Carolina, and then I plugged something in Florida and Georgia, just to see what was going on in these states. And we still have quite a road to go, but I would be remiss if I didn't say something at Fintech South to say, go look at that and find out what's happening in your community, because you probably have colleagues that don't have protections and are wondering, where do you stand on these issues and how can you make a difference so that the people in North Carolina and South Carolina get the protections that you have when you're in Atlanta or you're in Miami. And what can we do on that front for, equity in housing, in lending, and all the other things that fintech companies are great at solving problems for when it comes to, as you say, Black and brown people. What are we doing to help people and put structural tools in front of people in a very public and broad way?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree.
I got recently, one of my neighbors is this lovely lady, and she helped me practice how to say her name because it's not a traditional way of saying a name. And one morning I was coming in on a Sunday, and she said, "Where are you going?" She said, "We're going to a BLM walk protest in Miami." And I said, "That's amazing." And so on further research, it's her 13-year-old daughter who's organizing this. Her name is Egyptia, and it's Instagram, Egyptia's movement. But my kids, who are 7, couldn't be more excited to be part of this and understand how to create love and respect and be part of Egyptia's movement, because she's cool. And so it gives me a lot of hope for future generations of this country to see that, Sunday morning, my son in his BLM shirt saying, "Why aren't you ready?" And I'm like, I've got 10 more things to do, but the future generations are there.
They're there. And I think part of it is because they have no other choice, right? The future generation is already a majority minority society. Like it is, they've already arrived. I do think though, if those systems are still hardened, you see, because I don't think that systemic racism exists because there's badness per se in the world. See, I think if the system is what it is, even goodness can be bent over time, right? Mm-hmm. So I actually think that we have to keep on this bet on youth being the savior is an important one, in the sense that if their attitudes were already bad, that would be a disaster, right? But ultimately, I think as the generation that has been sort of given the mantle to make sure that it's in good stead until they get it, we have to recognize that as long as those systemic issues are in place, even their goodness will be morphed. Even they will end up in neighborhoods that are not diverse and jobs that don't have a diversity pipeline, and scratching their heads as to why. I didn't grow up like this. My parents raised me to be open-minded. I had friends who were, you know what I mean? So I do think that we cannot rely just on goodness. Goodness is the starting point. Openness is the starting point, but we have to keep at this systemic change, programmatical and individual change that we've started on. And as I said, I don't believe this thing is going to happen in a day, but we have to keep at it.
You can't bake a cake in a microwave,
exactly. Or as my boss likes to say, 9 women cannot have a baby in a month.
The math on that one, I had to stop for a second. So let's talk about Fintech South. I mean, you and I both work for companies that are in the South. I am super proud of what my company is doing in terms of embracing diversity and inclusion initiatives, creating ERGs, working to figure out how we work with partners, making sure that how we onboard vendors. All of these initiatives are super important. We're working with outside resources, internal resources. The energy is remarkable, and a lot of that has been was already there, but it's really been energized by what's happened this year. Have you seen difference in your company in terms of the energy around D&I initiatives and ERGs?
Well, actually, I'll tell you, the reason I came to Allies because they were already futuristic in the way their attitude and their programs around this, right? So they were already leaned in, and this effort just made them lean in even further. So it was really it was remarkable to see. So whether it is about third party vendor or I'm not as close to that one, but I know it's happening, or the complete sort of maturity of their diverse communities that we have. We have different kinds of employee engagement communities that are very well, that are active and engaged, and management is very much engaged with. We have the way that we recruit is very intentional. We have a program called Moguls where we sponsor students from historically Black colleges as interns, and we just flush the organization with them each year. I myself had one in my division. So they do a lot and continue to do. They invest in communities for home ownership because as they are a bank. So yeah, I have seen the change. I never, I think that we have to say we are proud to be at Ally, but then we have to challenge ourselves as though we are not doing enough. That has to be because every one of us, even doing a lot in this, is not enough in one lifetime.
That's for sure. I think there's years of damage and scar tissue, and I think it is the institutionalization and the systemic and the structural systems are all in need of foundational leveling. I was going to say that
work from home. Hey. Yes.
You start your family too early and understanding all of this stuff. So I think it's actually great. So good morning to them.
Good morning.
It's a brave new world. I think we should talk about COVID, and I will say that this has been challenging for me as a single parent with 2 kids doing remote learning.
Yeah.
You're parenting with 2 kids at home during COVID, and let's put it out there, like in the sense that we can afford systems in place, we can afford to have help with this. Mm-hmm. The communities that we work with don't necessarily have the same support systems or the financial resources to figure out how to manage their kids during this time. Yeah. I'm just thinking, have you seen any resources from a finance or tech standpoint that have helped families to manage through this crisis?
I haven't seen financial resources, but I have seen, at least in the vantage point of Ally, like the kind of flexibility that they're trying to give employees who don't have much flexibility when it comes to childcare. Whether it's like when you get to schedule your time, just having more flexibility in terms of how the day is scheduled. I would say, in my city, New York City, our city, I mean, the devastation is very clear, right? This is going to get even further exacerbate the issue. And the one that really sort of makes me nervous is this immersion of pods for money, right? So when you're virtual and now you can afford a pod that can better teach your child, you can keep up with education. And so that's one where I felt, we're going to start seeing the diminishing of it. So I've heard of a few programs in my school, in my children's school, they've started doing where parents are starting to spend their time. And that woman that you're seeing back and forth is my wife. Sorry, she doesn't know she's on live camera. So they've started doing pods where parents are teaching, for example, so that, if you can't afford monetarily to sponsor these kinds of things, parents in our school that have either education background or ability to teach are starting a cooperative, right? So that people who don't have money to be able to do this can do this. So I feel like there's both programs that I've seen, but also individuals taking this as an opportunity for community building.
Yeah, it's something that we saw in March that the parents in my kids' classes all got together and we all fielded a day a week where we took a morning. I took geography 2 days a week. I feel like Alex Trebek. I took geography for 500, and it was important. There were 12 kids each morning that were joining me for geography lessons in my own little pod. I realize we're short on time, but I was curious if there were any tools or tips or tricks you're seeing that we could lend to the FinTech South community around how to accelerate into diversity and inclusion into 2021. Given you are on the front lines, and I'm seeing a lot of things. We've mentioned some resources here already.
Yeah. So I'm actually not gonna, back to in the spirit of like not let people off the hook. I'm actually not gonna spout out programmatical solutions. I'm gonna say, put yourself on, like we do everything else in business, right? What you measure ends up being what does happen. Look at your percentage of whatever tool you use for your network and look at the composition of it and put a number, whatever that composition number is of diversity. And then put a target for yourself as an individual and look at that every single month and see how you're doing. Are you changing the composition? Is it looking more diverse? Which means you have to put yourself out there. You have to be more vulnerable. You have to reach out to people that look different from you and say, I think we have something in common. I'd love for you to be part of my network, right? That's what I'm going to give each individual as a personal marker to try to work on.
So Lule takes the road of personal KPIs, and I'm going to take the challenge on all the different D&I rubrics to go after. And I'm also going to suggest people look for ways that finance and technology can come up with solutions that are embedded into your technology that hold you accountable and give your community, whether it's a consumer-facing or an enterprise-facing solution, the ability to look at what's happening from a D&I standpoint within your organization and within the communities that you serve. Because until we all hold ourselves and our organizations and expose it to our communities, we're not going to be making progress. And the energy that we had starting with the horrible death of George Floyd is going to dissipate. So it's on us. Lule gave you the personal KPI. I would say to all of the FinTech companies that are attending from FinTech South, think about what you can do as an organization that you can surface on your site, on your brochureware, that shows both what you're doing as a company, but also what are you doing to educate your consumers around D&I initiatives. With that, I want to thank Lule for spending time with me, and it's always great to see you.
Thank you, Nathan, and thank you for helping me keep it real as all of this was happening.
I always learn from you.
See ya.
Thank you so much.
Bye.